She said she needed space. Not a divorce. Not separation. Just a few days to herself. To breathe again, she said. It's not you, she told me. It's me trying to find something I lost. Her name is Renee, and for nearly 7 years, I believed her every word. We weren't perfect. No couple is. But we talked. We listened. We made the time, even when life got heavy. Or at least, I thought we did. When she mentioned the solo trip, I didn't object. I knew she'd been stretched thin lately. Work stress, family drama, and the kind of internal restlessness that doesn't always make sense until it's too late. She didn't seem like she was running from me, just trying to run back toward herself. She booked a cabin about 2 hours north of where we lived. No cell signal, she said, but the place had Wi-Fi in case of emergencies. It sounded peaceful, quiet, restorative, and she promised she'd send a check-in once she got there. That check-in never came. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe she was just unplugging. Maybe she wanted a few hours without the glow of a screen. But by the end of the first day, I felt it, that familiar itch behind the ribs. The kind you get when something's off, but you can't explain why. So I checked our shared phone plan. Not something I made a habit of doing, but she had never hidden it from me. I pulled up her location history. Her last ping location wasn't near the cabin. It was 35 miles west of it, outside a rural town I'd never heard her mention before. I zoomed in on the map. A thin gravel road, a cluster of cabins, a bait and tackle shop. Nothing else. Why would she be there? That's when I started scrolling her texts. Nothing out of the ordinary, at least not recent. But I saw something strange in her calendar. A meeting with someone named Ty. No last name. Just Ty. 3 p.m. Pack snacks. Pack snacks? That wasn't a meeting. That was a plan. My heart didn't race. It just sank. The kind of drop that leaves your mouth dry and your hands too steady. Like your body doesn't want to alert your brain that you've already started falling. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I got in my truck. I drove. I didn't even tell my brother I was leaving town. Didn't leave a note. Just a full tank and a tight jaw. And the kind of determination that only comes when the person you trust most gives you just enough reason to doubt. 2 hours later, I pulled into that rural town, passing a faded gas station and a closed diner. My GPS struggled, but I followed instinct. Gravel crunched beneath my tires as I turned down a narrow road lined with pine and fog. And then I saw it. A red Ford F-150 parked beside one of the smaller cabins. Mud spattered, windows tinted, engine cold. I didn't recognize the truck, but I recognized what was hanging from the rearview mirror. Renee's bracelet, gold with a chipped blue stone. When I gave her 3 birthdays ago, she used to wear it every day. Said it reminded her of our trip to the coast. She claimed she packed light for this getaway. Said she was only bringing a book, some clothes, and her yoga mat. She didn't say she was leaving that bracelet behind, or hanging it in someone else's truck. I sat there in my own vehicle, watching the cabin. Lights off. No sound. No movement. But the air felt charged. Still. Like the moment just before lightning touches down. I didn't get out. Not yet. Because I wasn't ready to face what I already knew. But I knew I would. And when I did, the version of me that believed her, he'd be gone for good. I didn't storm out of the truck. I didn't throw the door open or pound my fist against the cabin. That's the kind of thing you do when you're not sure. When you still think there's a chance you've misread something. But I wasn't guessing anymore. I sat there for another 15 minutes. Long enough to watch the shadows stretch around the trees. Long enough to hear the faint hum of music through the pine. Then I stepped out. The gravel crunched beneath my boots like it didn't want to cooperate. The air was damp, heavy. And with every step toward that cabin, I felt less like a man and more like a verdict waiting to be delivered. The door wasn't locked. I didn't even have to knock. That alone said everything. I opened it slow. No drama. No warning. If there was a moment to catch them off guard, this was it. But the cabin was empty. Small kitchen. 2 mugs in the sink. An open bag of chips on the table. Couch cushions a mess like someone had just sat there and got up in a hurry. A pair of hiking boots by the door. Men's size. Not mine. The bedroom door was half closed. I stepped through it, and there they were. Renee. And him. Wrapped in a towel. Both of them. She gasped before I said a word. Cole, what, how did you? He backed up, startled, eyes wide, trying to reach for his jeans at the foot of the bed. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just stared at her. She looked small, barefaced, hair damp, and guilty enough to fill the room with something thick and rotting. Please, she started. It's not. Don't, I said. My voice was quieter than I expected. Don't say it's not what it looks like. She went silent. The man, I assumed this was Ty, stood still, one arm crossed, the other fumbling with a shirt. I didn't know you were married, he said. I laughed. Actually laughed. Well, you know now. He glanced at Renee, as if waiting for her to correct me. She didn't. She just looked at me like she wanted to be anywhere else. How long? I asked, still standing in the doorway. She hesitated. Too long. How long? I repeated, sharper. 2 months, she whispered. My jaw locked. And what was this? Goodbye. A celebration? Her mouth opened, but no sound came. I shook my head, stepping back. You told me you needed space. That you needed to find yourself. I did, she said, suddenly louder. I needed to figure out why I felt so empty. And sleeping with someone else fixed that? It wasn't about him, she started. No. I cut in. It never is. It's about you. Always was. I turned toward the door. Cole, please, she called out. Don't just walk out. Don't leave it like this. I paused. You left it like this. I'm just picking up the pieces. Then I walked out. The trees didn't sway. The birds didn't sing. Nature didn't seem to care that something sacred had just collapsed on itself behind me. When I got to the truck, I didn't start it right away. I just sat there with my hands on the wheel, staring at that damn bracelet still swinging from the stranger's rearview mirror. She wore it every day. And then, one day, she didn't. Now I knew why. She wasn't missing herself. She was replacing me. I didn't drive home right away. I sat there for a while, hands still on the wheel, heart steady but hollow. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry anymore. What I felt was colder than rage. What I felt was done. The bracelet swayed gently from Ty's mirror, catching the light like it had no idea what it symbolized. That little chipstone used to mean something. Now it was just evidence. A keepsake in someone else's collection. I backed out slowly, gravel crunching beneath my tires like a goodbye. I didn't look back. By the time I hit the highway, the sky had started to shift pink on the edges, gold behind the trees. Renee had always said sunsets made her feel safe. I used to believe her, but now I wondered if she ever meant anything she said, or if she just liked the way lies sounded when you wrapped them in soft words. Halfway home, I pulled into a rest stop and checked my phone for missed calls. All from her. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I deleted them without opening. If she wanted to tell me something honest, she'd have to find a new language, one that didn't come scripted with guilt. When I got home, the house was exactly as I left it. The mail still sat on the counter, her slippers still beside the couch, one of her hair ties on the sink, like she'd only stepped out to grab something and would be right back. But she wouldn't. Not this time. I didn't touch any of her things. I didn't start packing boxes or deleting photos. I just sat down at the kitchen table and opened a fresh notebook. I needed to write it down, not because I wanted to remember, but because I needed to process it like a surgeon handles a wound, methodical, sterile, precise. One cut at a time. I wrote, she lied, not once, repeatedly, with calm eyes and a steady voice. She lied about where she was, who she was with, and why she needed space. But it wasn't space. It was distance from me, from truth, from the version of herself she didn't want to face. She didn't find herself in that cabin. She lost me, and she knew it. I stopped there, closed the notebook. That was enough for now. At midnight, the doorbell rang. I didn't move. A second ring, then knocking, then silence, then her voice, muffled through the wood. Cole, I know you're in there. Still, I didn't move. She knocked again, softer this time. Please talk to me. I stayed seated, because I'd already heard enough. Eventually, she left. I heard the car door shut. I waited another hour before going upstairs, as if my silence could erase her noise. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I slept on the couch. Not out of punishment, out of truth. Because that bed, our bed, was hers only in memory now. And memories aren't enough to hold someone anymore. Not after they've held someone else. Morning came with too much light. I hadn't slept. Not really. Just dozed in short bursts, my body too tired to move but my mind refusing to shut down. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her barefoot in that cabin, wrapped in another man's towel, mouth open in panic when she saw me standing in the doorway. That image was carved into me now. Permanent. I got up around 6:30, made coffee I didn't want, and sat at the kitchen table, listening to the kind of quiet that feels more like pressure than peace. Then my phone buzzed again. Renee. A text this time. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know it's over. Him. That part of me. It's over. I stared at the screen, not because I believed her, but because of how quickly she'd moved to damage control. She wasn't sorry. She was scared. And scared people say things to survive, not to heal. Another message followed a minute later. Can we meet? Just talk. Anywhere you choose. I just need to explain. Once. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have words, but because I had too many and none of them would make a damn difference to someone who already made their choice. Instead, I threw on a hoodie, grabbed my keys, and drove. Not to work, not to her, to my brother Nate's place. He opened the door in gym shorts, sleep still in his eyes. You look like hell. Thanks, I muttered, walking in without being invited. Coffee. Already had some. He followed me to the kitchen, So, you ready to talk about it? I didn't answer right away. Then I said, she was with someone. I saw it. Nate didn't flinch. He didn't pretend to be shocked. He just nodded once. You okay? No. You want to be? That question hung in the air for a long time. Did I? Could I? Eventually, I said, I want to stop feeling like it was my fault. He leaned against the counter. Good start. We talked for an hour, maybe more. I told him everything about the fake trip, the tracker, the bracelet, the cabin, the man. He didn't offer advice, just a place to land the words I couldn't carry anymore. Before I left, he said, you don't owe her your ear, especially not yet. I know, I said, but I think I need to hear what she says anyway. He raised an eyebrow. Why? Because clarity is better than confusion, even when it hurts. I drove home slower this time, not because I was stalling, but because I was building something in my head, a boundary, a line she wouldn't be allowed to cross again. And when I got inside, I texted her one word, talk. She replied within seconds. I'll come to you. 6 p.m. I'll stay outside if you want. And she did. That evening, she stood on our front step like a stranger with borrowed guilt. She wore jeans, no makeup, hair pulled back the way she used to wear it when we first met. I won't come in, she said. I nodded. Good. We sat on opposite ends of the porch. She spoke first. I'm not going to ask you to forgive me. I don't have that right. But I want to explain what happened, not to fix it, just to tell the truth. I stayed quiet. She took a breath. It started out as a conversation. That's it. Someone who listened when I didn't feel heard. Someone who asked about me when I forgot how to ask about myself. I didn't mean for it to become more, but it did. And once it did, I didn't stop it. Still, I said nothing. Her voice cracked. I should have told you. I should have chosen you. I didn't. And I know what that cost. I finally spoke. You didn't just betray me, Renee. You betrayed the version of yourself I believed in. She looked down, and I stood. I don't know what happens next, but I do know this. You don't get to control it anymore. She nodded slowly. I'll wait. As long as it takes. Or as long as you let me. She walked away after that. Didn't ask for a hug. Didn't reach for a hand. And for the first time, she did something right. She left me with my own silence. The silence after she left wasn't the same as before. It wasn't heavy anymore. It wasn't sharp. It was just there, settled like dust after a collapse. It no longer pressed on my chest. It just surrounded me, quiet, neutral. I didn't text her the next day. She didn't call. That was progress, I think. I woke early, made breakfast for one, and sat on the back steps with a mug of coffee. I stared at the garden she used to tend, now overgrown. A few late flowers blooming out of habit, kind of like us. Everything we built was still standing, but it had grown wild without care. Beauty in some corners, rot in others. Mid-morning, I started clearing out the guest room. Not out of spite, just space. Her books, her extra clothes, hairbrush, skin cream. I packed it all neatly in a box, labeled it, and set it in the hall closet. I wasn't throwing her out, but I wasn't going to pretend she hadn't already left in her own way. A knock came at noon. It was Nate. I brought tacos, he said, holding up a brown bag. You think tacos fix betrayal? He shrugged. They can't hurt. We sat on the porch eating in silence for a while, both of us chewing like the food might keep us from saying anything we couldn't take back. Eventually, he said, you thinking divorce? I'm thinking, I replied. Look, he said, wiping his mouth, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you're allowed to walk away, Cole. You don't have to wear her mistake forever just because you were loyal. I nodded, slow. I just don't know who I am without her. I admitted. Maybe that's the point, he said. Maybe now's your chance to find out. That stuck with me. After he left, I spent the evening going through old photos. Not digital ones. The physical albums we kept in the storage chest, back before filters and captions became the new storytelling. There we were. Road trips, anniversaries, random Sunday afternoons on the couch. She looked happy in them. So did I. But now, looking back, I couldn't tell if we were genuinely in love or just convincing ourselves that staying meant succeeding. One photo caught me off guard. Her, laughing, hair windblown, sitting on the tailgate of my truck after our third date. We had driven out past the city limits just to watch a storm roll in. That night, she told me, I want a love that doesn't hide when things get messy. I believed her, but she hadn't lived up to it. That night, I drafted a message. Renee, this isn't forgiveness. This isn't goodbye. This is me, choosing clarity. I'm not rushing into anything, and I'm not leaving the door wide open either. You lied. You chose someone else in the most intimate way, but now you're finally being honest. That matters. Not enough to fix us, but enough for me to listen for now. I need time, real time, without you here. I don't want daily updates. I don't want check-ins. I need to remember what it feels like to be me, not someone you orbit. You say you'll wait. Don't wait with hope. Wait with change. And if I ever come back, it won't be to what we were. It'll be for what we can become. Cole. I didn't send it that night. I slept on it, woke up, reread it, and sent it. Not because I needed her to read it, but because I needed to write it. She didn't reply right away. She didn't need to. Some messages are meant to sit, to burn, to teach. I stood on the porch again later that evening, watching the clouds move in, storm in the distance, thunder rolling low. And I wasn't afraid of it, because finally, for the first time since the cabin, I felt still. Not broken, not vengeful, just still. 2 weeks passed. No texts, no calls, no surprise drop-ins. Renee stayed true to what I asked. She disappeared, not in the way she had before, not to deceive or escape, but to honor my distance. That was a different kind of silence, and I noticed it. It didn't scream like betrayal. It waited like respect, and in that quiet, I began to find pieces of myself that I didn't realize I'd lost. I stopped checking the door at night. I stopped expecting the buzz of my phone to carry an apology or excuse. I started making decisions that weren't tied to her in any way. I took up running again. Early mornings, just before the sun pushed over the horizon. Miles through back roads, air cold enough to sting, but clean enough to feel like breathing meant something again. I wasn't running from pain. I was moving through it, letting it sweat out of me, step by step. I stopped wearing my wedding ring on the 5th day, not out of anger. It just felt heavy. And for once, I didn't feel like carrying the weight of something that wasn't whole anymore. One night, I met Nate for a drink at a quiet bar outside of town, the kind with more wood paneling than beer taps, a place where no one asked questions unless you invited them to. You seem lighter, he said, clinking his bottle against mine. I am, I said, not happy, but lighter. That's a start. We talked about work, football, the neighbor's kid who wrecked his dad's truck last weekend, normal stuff, and it felt good, like I wasn't tethered to the drama for once. Then Nate asked, "You still think about her every day?" I didn't have to lie. Yeah, but not in the same way. He nodded. That's how healing works. It doesn't ask permission. It just shows up one morning when you stop begging it to. When I got home that night, there was an envelope on the porch. No name on it, but I didn't need one. Inside was a letter, Renee's handwriting. I stood under the porch light and read it there, alone, like I was afraid bringing it inside would stain the house. Cole, I'm not writing this to win you back. I'm writing this to thank you for giving me the gift of accountability, not silence, not punishment. Accountability. You didn't scream. You didn't shame. You showed me what I broke and stepped back to let me feel it. Every day I'm not beside you, I learned something about myself I wish I had known before I broke us. I'm not proud of the woman you found in that cabin, but I'm trying to become someone neither of us would turn away from. You asked for time. I'm giving it. And if the clock runs out and you're gone for good, I'll still be grateful I got this chance to grow in the aftermath. But if there's even a fraction of you that believes something better can rise from what we ruined, know that I'm not just waiting. I'm working. I folded the letter carefully and walked it back inside. I didn't cry. I didn't call her. I just set it on the kitchen table and stared at it, because something inside me finally started to believe. Not in her. Not yet. But in the idea that maybe, just maybe, who we were after all of this might be more honest than who we pretended to be before. The next morning, I pulled the box of her things out of the closet. I opened it, took one deep breath, and began sorting it, not to return it, not to get rid of it, but to decide what was worth carrying forward. I didn't expect a memory to knock the wind out of me, but it did. It was a scarf, tucked between two sweaters in the box of her things I'd packed away weeks earlier. Gray with a navy stripe, thin, simple, frayed a little on one end. I bought it for her from a street vendor in New York the year we celebrated our 3rd anniversary. It had started raining that night, cold fast. We ducked under the awning of a bakery, laughed like idiots, and she said, "I love this. Not the rain, just this." Now the scarf was in my hands, smelling faintly like her perfume, like memories soaked in fabric. For a second, it hurt more than the photos ever did, because this scarf didn't lie. It wasn't tied to betrayal or the man in the cabin or the bracelet hanging from someone else's truck. It was just ours, untouched, a small piece of a time when we were right. And that's what made it dangerous. Because memories like that don't stay neutral. They pull. They confuse. They make you question whether pain really means what it meant the day it broke you. I folded it and set it aside. Carefully. That afternoon, I visited my parents. I hadn't told them everything. Just that Renee and I were working through something. They didn't ask much. My dad's never been one for emotional dissection. And Mom, well, she sees more than she says. She hugged me a little tighter than usual when I walked through the door. "You look like you've been rebuilding something," she said. "Maybe," I answered. "Maybe just figuring out what's worth rebuilding." We sat on the porch while Dad worked in the garage, and I told her the truth. Not every detail, but enough. Enough for her to understand why I hadn't been myself, why I hadn't brought Renee around, why there was a stiffness in my voice every time her name came up. Mom listened without flinching. She didn't gasp or curse. She just nodded slowly and said, "Forgiveness isn't a yes or no, honey. It's a staircase, one you build with both hands, every day, even if the other person never climbs it with you." I sat with that, let it settle, and for the first time, I realized I wasn't afraid of the forgiveness anymore. I was afraid of what it would ask of me. That night, I started writing again. Not letters, not messages I'd send, just thoughts. I wrote, "I'm no longer asking if she deserves me back. I'm asking if I can still recognize myself in this version of us. The version that comes after the storm, after the lies, after the cabin. I'm not the same man who trusted blindly, but I might be a man who trusts with wisdom now, if she can meet me there." And maybe that's the key. It wasn't about forgetting what she did. It was about deciding if what came next was something I could believe in, not because I wanted it to be true, but because I'd seen enough to know it could be. I set the pen down and stared out the window for a while. The house was still, not lonely, just quiet. I didn't miss her presence, but I missed who I was when I believed she'd never hurt me. And that's the version of myself I wanted back, not naive, but whole. The next morning, I went for another run. Same route, same sunrise. But I wasn't running from anything. I was running towards something now, something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. And I think, maybe, I was ready to see her again. Not to reconcile, but to see if the person standing in front of me had learned how to carry what she broke. I texted her the next morning. Just 2 words. "Let's talk." She didn't reply right away. I figured she'd be careful with it, maybe scared it was bait. But 20 minutes later, her name lit up my screen with a simple reply. "Anytime, anywhere." I picked a park halfway between us. Neutral ground. A wide open space where nothing could feel hidden, nothing could feel confined. We met under an old oak tree near a bench worn smooth by years of quiet conversations like the one we were about to have. She was already sitting when I arrived. Jeans, hoodie, no makeup, hair tied back like she didn't want to pretend this was anything other than raw and real. I sat down beside her, not too close, not too far. "You look steady," she said, like she didn't expect it. "I've had time to build that," I replied. She nodded. "Thank you for coming." "Don't thank me," I said. "Not yet." She looked at her hands, twisting a ring I didn't recognize. A new one, maybe. Something symbolic. Or maybe just habit. "I'm not here to plead," she said. "I'm not here to explain again. I think I've said everything that matters. So why'd you agree to meet?" "To answer whatever you haven't said out loud yet." I sat back. Let that sink in. There were questions, dozens of them, but only one sat at the front of my mind. "When did you stop choosing me?" I asked. She closed her eyes. "Not all at once," she whispered. "Little pieces. I stopped saying what I needed. You stopped asking when you felt me pulling away. I thought maybe if I stayed quiet, the tension would pass. Instead, I made space for someone else. And you like that," I said. She didn't deny it. "I like being seen," she said, "even if it was in all the wrong ways." "That man," I said, "was he the first?" She shook her head. "The only." "That's not what I asked." Her jaw tightened. "He's the only person I physically crossed that line with. But emotionally? I wondered way before that. I knew it. I hated it. And I didn't stop." Silence stretched between us. I stared ahead at the horizon. Kids were playing soccer in the distance. Dogs barking. Someone rode past on a bike. Life kept moving. That was the cruel part. "I'm not the same man you married," I said finally. "I know. And I won't be the same man who lets it all slide because love used to be enough." Her eyes welled, but she didn't let the tears fall. "You asked me to wait," she said softly. "And I did. I didn't hope. I worked. I tore myself down and tried to rebuild without asking for your help. I know I can't erase what I did, but I swear, Cole, if you gave me a chance, not to come back to what we had, but to create something new, I'd spend every day making it real." I looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't the woman I found in the cabin. She wasn't the one who left without explanation. She was something else now, maybe broken in new ways, but standing, not begging, just present. "I don't trust you yet," I said. "I wouldn't expect you to. I don't know if I'll ever be able to again." "I can live with that," she replied, "as long as you're willing to let me try." I didn't answer. Instead, I stood. She didn't follow. I looked down at her and said, "You'll hear from me when I'm ready. No sooner. And if that day never comes, promise me you'll still keep becoming whoever this version of you is." She nodded, her voice tight. "I will." I walked away, but not with anger, not with heartbreak, with possibility. And that was more than either of us had held in our hands for a long time. 3 weeks passed before I said another word to her, not because I wanted to punish her, but because I needed that time like a man needs oxygen. A space where I could hear myself again without her voice clouding every decision. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't ignoring. I was rebuilding, brick by brick. I took a short trip alone, cabin by a lake. No cell signal, just time and quiet. The kind that forces you to sit with everything you've been avoiding. I brought a journal and a stack of books I hadn't touched since before the world cracked open. Most of them stayed unread. Instead, I walked, hiked, slept without alarms, watched the sunrise with no company but my own breath and the rustling trees. And somewhere around day 3, I realized I wasn't hurting anymore. Not like before. It still stung. Yeah. The memory of what she did would probably always carry that sting, but it wasn't cutting me anymore. It wasn't fresh. It was just a scar beginning to fade. When I got back home, I made dinner for myself. Simple. Steak, roasted carrots, a cold beer. I sat at the table like I used to, no phone, no distractions. Just me. And it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Then I opened the notebook again. Wrote one sentence. She burned the old version of us. But I decide if there's ever a new one. The next morning, I called her. She picked up on the second ring. Breath caught in her throat. Cole, she said. Don't talk. I said. Just listen. She went silent. I'm not making any declarations. I'm not moving you back in. But I've spent time figuring out who I am now. And I don't hate the man I found. In fact, I trust him more than I ever trusted the man who let this all slide. I paused. I'm willing to meet again. Talk. No promises. No expectations. But face to face. Honestly. Okay. She whispered. Yes. Just say when. We agreed on Saturday. Same park. Same bench. When I saw her again, something was different. She looked stronger. Not like she was trying to impress me, but like she'd learned to stand on her own. We didn't hug. Didn't smile like old friends. We just were. We talked about neutral things at first. Work. Books. She'd started volunteering again. Said it reminded her how to show up for people without needing something in return. I told her about the cabin. About how quiet had finally stopped feeling like punishment. Then she said something I didn't expect. I've started writing letters to the version of you I betrayed. I looked over. Why? To keep myself honest, she said. Because if I ever do get another chance with you, I don't want it to be based on what I remember. I want it to be based on what I've become. She didn't ask what I thought. She didn't need to. And that was the difference now. Everything between us used to be soaked in need. Need for validation, closeness, certainty. But this was about choice. As the sun dipped low behind the trees, I stood. So what now? She asked. Now, I said. Now we stop counting days. Stop measuring pain. And just live. Separately. Honestly. And if life ever brings us back together in the right way, we'll know. She nodded. Tears gathered in her eyes, but she blinked them back. I'd like that, she said. I turned to go but paused. One last glance. You said you're writing letters to the man you betrayed. She nodded. Good, I said. Because if he ever returns, you'll want to know how to greet him right. I walked away. But this time, I didn't feel like something was ending. I felt like something real might finally begin. A month later, I found one of her letters. Not in my mailbox. Not dropped on the porch like the first. I found it by accident, tucked into the pages of an old novel I kept in the truck. The kind of book you mean to finish but never quite do. The envelope was unsealed. No name on the front. Just a folded piece of lined paper. Her handwriting still familiar in the way your own reflection is familiar, even when you don't recognize it anymore. Cole, this isn't a plea. It's a mirror. I'm not writing to win. I'm writing to reflect, because I think you deserve that more than you ever deserved the silence I gave you before. I know now that pain doesn't excuse betrayal, and love doesn't cancel consequence. You gave me everything, and I gave myself away. That's on me. That always will be. But if I ever get to see the man I broke standing in front of me again, not to forgive, but to understand, I'll thank him. Because even in your absence, you've been the reason I've grown. I don't expect another chance. I'm just learning to be someone who would deserve one, if it ever came. I folded the letter and set it on the dash. Let it sit there under the sun for hours while I worked. And when the day was done, I didn't throw it away. I brought it inside and placed it next to the journal where I'd written down my worst thoughts, side by side, pain and perspective. That night, I slept better than I had in months. And when I woke up, I didn't reach for the past. I reached for the day in front of me. Later that week, I called her, not to invite her over, not to discuss timelines or second chances, just to talk. We met at the garden center on a Saturday morning. Strange place for a reunion, but fitting in its own way. We used to dream of planting raised beds in the backyard. Tomatoes, basil, a lemon tree that would never survive our winters, but made us laugh anyway. She was already there, holding a small rosemary plant in one hand. Didn't expect this place, she said as I approached. Neither did I. But I figured if we were going to talk about growth, we should at least be surrounded by it. She smiled. Not wide, not romantic, just honest. We walked slowly through the aisles of flowers and soil, not speaking much. But silence between us wasn't bitter anymore. It was patient. Eventually, I said, I'm not sure where this goes. I'm not sure if it goes anywhere. She nodded. That's okay. But I don't hate you. Not anymore. She blinked hard, jaw tight. That's more than I thought I'd ever hear from you. I didn't say I forgive you, I added. That's a different mountain. I'm just saying, I'm not climbing it with my fists clenched anymore. She nodded again. And I'm not waiting at the top. I'll climb it too. Alone, if I have to. We stood there for a while, letting it hang. Then she asked, do you think you'll ever love me again? I paused, not to create drama, but because it deserved real thought. I think I might already be learning how to love myself again. And if that leads me back to you, it'll be as someone new. She didn't cry. She didn't kiss me. She just placed the rosemary back on the shelf and said, then I'll keep planting. We parted ways without plans. No promises. No rings. Just two people walking away from the wreckage, a little taller than before. And maybe, just maybe, towards something worth building. Together.